LP3, which is for week 3. Okay, how many of you have books? I got 1, 2, 3, 4 books. Okay, I'm going to pair you up because in this exercise I want us to look at sentences and how sentences work, within your writing, so that you can identify. There are 3 different kinds of sentences, so I need people that have a text that can look in there. The information in this handbook is pretty succinct. It's not lengthy, so they're not difficult to read, but it kind of gives you an idea. What's on pages 18 through 21 in your text has to do with transitions and making paragraphs unified and coherent. Okay, so every sentence you write, the sentence that follows it should fit with it, so it makes sense. And that's what we call coherency, and that's how you get a unified paragraph. So, for instance, if I asked you the question, what are 4 ways to improve your community? Okay, that's the question you get. What are 4 ways to improve your community? You're going to brainstorm that. Think about what those 4 ways might be. Okay, because those 4 ways then become, if you remember from last week on this thesis exercise, you guys remember that? So if you come up with a topic like, I don't know, improving your community might be the topic. Well, then how do you write the thesis for that? So I'm asking the question, what are 4 ways? All you do with a question like this is you turn it into a statement. So you would say, 4 ways to improve, and you can use my community or you can say a particular community. So maybe you want to say, Pijutahaka. Okay, 4 ways are, give me some ideas. What are 4 ways to improve a community?
Build a rec center.
Build a rec center. So, let me see. Figure out. Building a rec center. What else? What else would improve your community? Get a nice football field. Or was that built to improve the community? Or was that built just because there was a need for a football field?
There's a need for it.
Yeah. So I don't remember kind of what it looked like before, but it looks really nice now. Yeah. So I mean, part of that all enhances the community as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Community members come to the football games and such, but building a rec center, what else can you do to improve your community? Need 4 things. Well, does it have to do with economic development? What?
Open the football field to the community.
Open it for what?
So they can exercise.
So they can exercise?
Yeah.
Maybe what you need is a community, you need a rec center, right? What do you anticipate the rec center would have in it?
A gym.
Okay.
Track. A fitness room.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other community spaces that could be enhanced? Are there parks? Are there pools? There's a movie theater, right? Outside of town? What are other things that you you would want in your community?
Okay, so what we know about whole numbers and integers, other than negative numbers, we also need to know about a set of numbers called rational numbers. Now, rational numbers are our favorite kind of numbers.
This looks like this would be the perfect topic for you guys to write on.
Well, a rational number
What kinds of things can we do to improve our communities?
but write it in one way.
Besides economic development, because you could say, oh, we need to build a store, we need to have bank services, we need infrastructure that provides services, right? What do you expect when you go to Rapid City? What are the kinds of things that you go there to do?
So we're not too worried about finishing the zero.
Go to the mall,
For what?
to eat,
To eat?
shop.
Shop? What kind of shopping can you get there that you can't get here? Okay. So, do you need more places to shop here?
Yeah.
Okay. Rec center, have more shopping centers, or more stores. You know, they could be different kinds, maybe more larger grocery store. Bigger grocery store. More selection. Maybe a dollar store. People like dollar stores because they like to get, what, value for what they're buying, right? What else would you do to improve your community? Interesting thing about this particular prompt is that it's used in a lot of essays. And it's also used for scholarship essays because it's requiring you to think critically about the space that you're in and ways to improve it. That's critical thinking. So it's about, well, you know, we could use this, but this would be better as well. What is there a shortage of here?
For example, when you put 3 reasons once, we get a repeated decimal. 3 goes into
Is there a shortage of housing?
3 goes into 10 3 times, that is 9.
No, there's not much housing. So basically, that would require probably more builders, more contractors, I would guess, somebody that can build them, because people go off the res to buy trailer houses, they're not built here, so you're having to go someplace else to buy something, which doesn't improve your infrastructure. So building a rec center, having more shopping centers, building more affordable housing. What else?
So this is what it does. It repeats word terminates. As investment.
And
Here are some numbers do neither of those things. They neither repeat nor do they terminate. So we don't know what it's going to do because the numbers never the same.
this one,
So we think about irrational. We never know what
building.
it is.
Sounds like it's all building.
Rational numbers are high. How many are high? And I'm terminating.
Let's tighten this up. Would include building a rec center, shopping center, affordable housing.
When you put that in calculator, it is not going to repeat a pattern and it is not going to stop.
Comma,
Keep going. But we don't really understand that, so.
and
Think about rational or irrational.
what else?
And whether that number is rational or irrational.
What might be difficult to find in terms of services here?
To
Are there daycare facilities?
So it might be a woman, you might be a guy.
No. How many of you have children? Where do your children stay?
One's in kindergarten, then the other one stays with his mom when she doesn't have class.
Oh, okay. So you just shift off and on to kind of take care of it, so you don't necessarily have a consistent babysitter. Okay. And that's usually what happens is that once they go to school, then that kind of, makes it a moot point because school is where they're spending the bulk of their time, even preschool. So if they're going to Head Start, and I don't know what age they take them at Head Start, does anybody know? They start there at 4?
I think it's 3.
3, so they can go to Head Start at 3, so that does help with some of that problem, but there is, if you don't have a place to take your kids, what do you do with them? It makes it difficult to either work or go to school. So maybe those kinds of building a rec center, shopping center, affordable housing, and safe daycare. Facility. Okay. So when you have identified these subpoints, I guess is what they are. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those become your paragraphs. And each paragraph then starts out with a topic sentence, because every paragraph usually has a main topic sentence. And one thing that you do then is every sentence that follows it then supports that sentence. So it could be one of the most important, maybe you're going to order this from order of importance. So the most important thing is building a rec center. Why would that be the most important one that we list? Is it more important than all the others? Chunky, what do you think?
I think it's important because kids will have something to do.
Okay, so you're providing a social environment as well as a healthy environment, right? But is that the most important one? We want to list, you've got to decide how you're going to organize an essay. So you can organize it by, in your book, I think it covers, on page 19, using patterns of organization. So one of those is emphatic order, where you're putting your emphasis on the most important thing and then working your way down to the least important thing. They also talk about chronological order, which means time. So you're putting your essay in order of time sequence. What's the most important things in terms of time? We need to do this first, this second, this third, this fourth. And that usually happens with a process essay. You've got to do this thing first or you can't get to the subsequent steps. So chronological is used in process. It's also useful in narration. One of the first essays that you're writing is narrative descriptive. And so what's important in that is that you're going to tell a story. You may use flashback. You may use flash forward. Those are techniques. But basically, people start from the beginning. I grew up here, I was born here, this is where I went to kindergarten, this is where I went to school, and you work your way forward to the present time. Spatial order, when you organize your essay by spatial order, you're looking at things like if you're describing a building, or if you're talking about defining something, then you may use spatial order to organize your essay, because it orients the reader's focus from right to left, top to bottom, and so forth, inside out. Logical order then presents information from specific to general or general to specific. And one of the examples that they give within this particular kind of organization is a paragraph by Amy Tan. And she's a pretty famous Chinese-American writer. She talks about, it was not only disappointment my mother felt in me. In the years that followed, I failed her so many times, each time asserting my own will. my right to fall short of expectations. I didn't get straight A's, I didn't become class president, I didn't get into Stanford, and I dropped out of college. So she starts out with a real general kind of statement. It was not the only disappointment my mother felt in me. This large disappointment, you're saying, what do you mean? What can you be more specific? And then she does. She says, I didn't get straight A's, I didn't become class president, I didn't get into Stanford, and I dropped out of college. So that's what we mean by general to specific. Start out with something kind of broad and then narrow it down. We're doing the same thing here in this thesis. 4 ways to improve your community. That sounds like kind of a big, large, general category of things. But then when you articulate the kinds of ways that you would improve your community, now you're becoming more specific. So when you write a paragraph on building a rec center, you're going to be specific in that. What it should look like, what it would contain, how it would help the community, how it would benefit students and young people. If you're going to talk about building a shopping center, then you do the same thing. How does this improve your community? How would it be helpful to people here? The great thing about a shopping center is what? What can you buy there? You could buy everything, right? You could have just a multi-purpose shopping center. And in which case, if you can buy everything there, what does it save you? It saves you
Gas money and time.
gas money and time. That's exactly right, because time's worth money too. So it would save you, if you didn't have gas money, having to go clear someplace to buy the things that you need, okay? Affordable housing, how does that help a community? Does anybody know?
Provides more space for families so they're not all jam-packed in one house.
Yeah, so it provides more space for families so they're not jam-packed, but it also provides the infrastructure for people to move and live in different places. So if someone comes here to work or to, or wants to live in this district, even if they are traveling outside for work, then there's housing that's available. If you have no housing, it makes it pretty impossible. And then you have to look at the economics of that. You might as well be making money here than sending somebody someplace else to capture the dollars that you're spending. So that includes rent or anything else. You have to, most people that come to teach live off the reservation. I was born here, so I live on the reservation. So it wasn't an issue really so much in finding housing, but it could be depending on where I want to live. There might not be housing available. And so that's part of the problem. Then you're going someplace else and renting and spending that money there. And then the last thing, a safe daycare facility. What's important about that? The children. It's important for children to have a safe environment, right? But what else is important about having a daycare facility, an actual facility? Why do we have daycare facilities? So people can go to work. That's exactly one of the issues that comes up time and time again. We don't have enough daycare facilities. We don't have somebody to consistently watch children. If you just have one babysitter and she becomes ill with something contagious, you can't take baby there. So then you're either taking care of baby yourself or scrambling around to try to find somebody else. With the daycare facility, then you have more employed staff. So if someone is sick, you still have other staff members. The place doesn't just close down. Okay? And that can be really important then to the economic workforce for your ability to be able to go and get paid. If you don't go to work, you don't get paid. So that makes it kind of difficult in terms of economics. So when you're building these particular paragraphs, think about how you're going to organize that information within the paragraph. But remember that every paragraph has a topic sentence and the subsequent sentences support it. That's what's going on within your unified paragraphs. So on page 18 and 19, it talks about creating those paragraphs, how to use pronouns, And then on page 20 and 21, it talks about transitions. So are you guys familiar with transitions? What's a transition?
How many pages is it
You go from one thing to another, right? And so you typically need a word or a phrase or a sentence that gets us from one idea to another. So if, for instance, we're writing about this, and the first thing we talk about is building a rec center and how this rec center is going to improve the quality of this community because young people have a place to go and a healthy place to work out. But in addition to that, it's social in nature. You know, people get to meet and talk and so forth. But then you can lead with a sentence that transitions you into the next paragraph about a shopping center. You know, what's important about, you know, now you're learning to be healthy and you're there getting healthy and getting exercise. But then the next thing that you can talk about is the fact, well, you know, with our new shopping center, or if we build a shopping center, then we have access to better food choices, right? Okay, more nutritional food choices. You go from there into maybe the distance that it would take if you didn't have a shopping center from wherever you live. So affordable housing, you know, maybe answers that question about not having to shop 100 miles from home. It's not that people won't continue to do that, there's just things that you cannot supply totally in a small area. You just wouldn't have enough, you wouldn't generate enough income to do that. But the basics, you certainly would. And what are basic kinds of needs that are met? What are we talking about?
The first thing when I was doing that,
What are the kind of basics you buy for your house? Toiletries, paper products, right? Cleaning supplies, even foodstuffs. I mean, there's particular kinds that sell out more than others. What sells out the quickest, typically? You know that Hurricane Irma is going to hit Florida, right? You're aware that it's blasted through the Caribbean right now, right? You're aware of that. Okay, what's the first thing that people buy when they know that there's going to be a catastrophe? Water. So having potable water is probably pretty important, and that's the first thing that leaves the shelves. What else? What? Yeah, with what? Yeah, people get canned foods, but they buy perishable food too. Usually your bread shelves are empty. People buy bread, which is kind of interesting, but so they'll buy up perishables. If they're not buying bread, they'll buy tortillas, you know, so that you have those things on hand. But the other kinds of things that you would want would be what? Butter, whatever you're using to be able to make things. So you have to be able to think critically in a time like that because you run out of these products and you don't know how many days it'll be before you can get back. Milk is another one, any kind of dairy products. Because I think it's pretty safe to say that people don't have a cow or a goat tied up in the backyard. So basically you're going to need to go buy those particular items. So not having to go very far, you can make that a transition sentence that if there's affordable housing, you can shop in your own neighborhood or your own community and it keeps the dollars there. And then the last thing is, you know, daycare facility. How do you transition into that? You don't want to haul baby 50 miles to daycare. You want a local place, a local facility that's safe for your children and that won't be closed. You know, so that's the other piece of that. Okay, so transition words, they give you a list of them on 21. Now what I want you guys to do is, I'm going to put you into pairs and you're going to practice creating sentences. And there's 4 kinds of sentences. There are simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex. And it's like, well, why do we care? Why do we care about the sentences and what sentences look like? When you read, what you're reading for is information, and you want it to be interesting enough, the information, so that you will continue to read. Okay? So, simple sentences have only one independent clause. Which means what? You guys know what an independent clause is? What's an independent clause? Does anybody know? What's a complete sentence? What do you need in it? An independent clause means just that. It stands on its own. Okay? It is a complete sentence. And that means it has a subject plus a verb. It can have other items in there like prepositional phrases and things like that. It can have a complement or a direct object, things like that. We don't need to go through all of that. But essentially, they're short sentences. They don't have to be very short, but they can be. So, for example, we were sorry, we left, we did not meet all the guests. We felt disappointment of our friends at our early departure. A simple sentence is not a plain or short. It doesn't have to be. It is a sentence that conveys only one main idea. So you have one subject, plus you have one predicate or verb. Okay? So they give you the examples. A simple sentence can have more than one subject. Francis and Chris were sorry. It can have more than one verb, a compound verb. Francis ate peanuts and drank coffee. But a simple sentence is the most effective way to deliver a main point. Okay? A compound sentence, this is a simple sentence. A compound sentence is what? Two sentences, two independent clauses, two complete sentences put together by coordinating conjunction. So, two independent clauses put together by coordinating conjunction. Okay? What are coordinating conjunctions? And, but, for, nor, so, yeah. Those are all coordinating conjunctions. So if I said, I'll use Eddie, I'll say, Eddie coaches football, comma, but he does not coach track. Okay? Two sentences. Eddie coaches football. That's a complete sentence. That's a complete thought. He does not coach track. That is a complete thought. And I just used a pronoun, and this refers to Eddie, of course. So, the way that you hook them together into a compound sentence is you use a comma and a coordinating conjunction. It's that simple. Okay? Now, we have to, if we're going to talk about independent clauses, which are sentences that stand alone by themselves, they have subject and verbs and they're by themselves, we have to talk about dependent clauses. Dependent clauses are just that. They're dependent. They have to be hooked to an independent clause. They cannot stand alone by themselves. They're not a complete sentence. And one way you can identify a dependent clause is it's usually has a subordinating conjunction in front of it. So,
If you've got a decimal, you look behind the decimal. Is that pattern?
can't stand alone. Think of the dependent clause like a small child. It has to hold the hand of a parent, which is the independent clause. So what I see a lot of is when I went to Rapid City, and then there's a period. Why is this not correct? Why would that not be a complete sentence? Or more importantly, why would this be a dependent clause?
Because you're using abbreviations.
Nope.
Because it is only a subject.
Clauses have subjects and verbs. It is all about this word right here. This is called a subordinating conjunction. And the unfortunate thing about grammar, and I say it's unfortunate, is there's lots of different words for it. This is also an adverbial conjunction because it's telling us when. That's what adverbs do. Tell us when, where, why, how, and how much. Okay, so if you begin a sentence with something like this, or like the word although I didn't feel well today, that's not a complete sentence. Why? Because of this word right here. Now, is the rest of the sentence complete? Is that a complete sentence? I went to Rapid City?
Yeah.
Yep, it is. So that could be a complete sentence. But if you're going to say when on the front of it, it is not. So that means you need a comma and you need to finish your thought. When I went to Rapid City, what?
I went to Walmart.
I went to Walmart. Thank you, girl. I went to Walmart. Okay? So that completes all the thought. And really what you have here then is you have a dependent clause and it's hooked to an independent clause that can stand on its own. Okay? The other tricky thing is if you're looking for, if I say, well, what is the subject and the verb in that sentence? You always look to the independent clause. It's not that there isn't a subject or verb in the clause of the dependent one, but we don't care because that can't stand alone. So all that does is add frosting to your cupcake. And the cupcake is the independent clause. And anything else, if it's a dependent clause or a prepositional phrase, is frosting. It's additional information. Do I need to know when I went to Rapid City?
No.
You only need to know I went to Walmart. Where'd you go to Walmart? Well, considering there's only a Walmart in Rapid City and Shatter, I'd say, well, I went to Walmart in Rapid City. You can switch this around so that you don't have a dependent clause on the beginning of it. I went to Walmart when I went to Rapid City, so then you're adding that clause on the end. But I just want you to know this is what creates this is what's called a fragment, this dependent clause, if you put a period on the end of it. Although I didn't feel well today, comma, what?
I went to work.
I went to work. Yep. So you complete your thought. Okay, so when we talk about complex sentences, what we're talking about is an independent clause with a dependent clause. That's what constitutes a complex sentence. Because the bus was crowded, comma, I had to stand all the way. So complex sentences use subordinating, that's what a dependent clause is a subordinate to that, to show the importance of the ideas. Okay, does it make sense? Kind of? There's a list of, I think, if you go to page 331, I think is where it is. I have to look. Hang on. On page 264, it talks about independent clauses and dependent clauses. And I don't know if it gives you a list of those, so let me look on page 331. That's the other place it talks about using coordination. Okay, 331. Some frequently used subordinating conjunctions are because, although, unless, so that, before, after, when. So that's the list on 331. And those are probably the most common. There's other ones, but we're not going to dig down and go into formal grammar with them because you're not necessarily pulling this apart, but you are creating sentences when you write, and you're creating paragraphs. So you'd like your sentences not all to be short, choppy ones, right? You want to be able to write longer sentences and combine them because it creates the picture for your reader. Okay, the last one is a compound complex sentence that has two independent clauses and one or more dependent ones. And the example is, because she did not hear the alarm, comma, Mary was late, comma, and the bus had already left. That's fairly long. The sentence starts with the word because, so you already know, if you're starting with that kind of a word, that you've got a dependent clause hooked to the beginning of it. You can have, Mary was late, comma, and the bus had already left is a complete compound sentence. It's complete like that. So you're adding a dependent clause onto the front of it. Okay, so what I want you guys to do then is I'm going to put you into pairs and you're going to create an example of each of those. Create a simple sentence, a complex sentence, a compound sentence, and a compound complex. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, good. So Sheldon, can you work with Tanisha here? And Sarah, you can work with Sarah. And Eddie, can you work with, let me move you around here. Eddie, can you work with Melissa? And Elisa, can you work with Eddie? I'm going to distinguish between you two. Two, can you work with Melissa? And Shanti, can you work with Nicholas? And Nancy, can you work with, oh, we are missing one out. Okay? So, on a piece of paper, is it come here and work with Eddie? On a piece of paper, put both of your names, because this exercise then is done by both of you. And what are you going to do? Eddie too? What are you guys going to do? What did I ask you guys to do? How many do you do? No. Good. Okay. Need your attention, everyone. What are you doing? Sheldon, what are we doing?
Right now, or maybe that's each kind of sentence.
Okay, so once you just come up with examples of sentences, right? You write your own, you create your own. This will be on your midterm, But you're going to create a sentence. If I say, can you give me a complex sentence? And you'll be like, oh yeah, a complex sentence. Let me see, that's an independent and a dependent clause put together. I can do that. Okay? So I need one of each of these as an example. So you just have to talk with your partner and figure out how to write those. Now, they don't have to be, you're not going for the Nobel Prize or anything like that. You just need to create some sentences so that you can figure out how to do them and you know the pattern. Okay? Does that make sense? Oh, Daryl, did you not have a, did I get you to LP?
Sure. You want to write it?
There is no sign-in sheet. I just take note that you're here. Okay, so now you want to include everybody in there, so I need you to actually talk to one another. That's part of being a peer in your room, a good classmate. Right? Okay, so ask for everybody's input and no making fun if they come up with a crazy sentence, right? Let me see. Who wasn't here last week? There, how are you?
We are.
Somebody be the recorder, write them down. Okay, so let's talk about it, just talk about it, only get one piece of paper, both your names on it.
So just making a sentence out of all of this.
Yep, you're going to write a simple sentence, which is one independent clause. Then you're going to need to do a compound sentence, which is two independent clauses put together by conjunction. How many of you guys remember conjunction junction? You do? Thank you, Denisha.
Cartoon.
Yeah, the cartoon. Conjunction junction. What's your function? Then I forget what the next part is. Moving upwards and braces and clauses. So anyway, it's and, but, or, for, so, yeah. And that's what you would hook two independent clauses together with. So now you guys can think of some really interesting sentences, I'm guessing, right? Okay. Can you help me then? I'll give you some ideas. Put some adjectives in there. I just haven't to work with them. You need to borrow
I don't.
Well, let's do the subject. Like a simple subject? Well, what did you guys do here? You drove here. Okay. So, could you write, Melissa and Eddie drove to class? Did you drive, Melissa? You did? So that would be a simple sentence, right?
Complex would be because the copy.
And then a compound sentence would be what? With two independent clauses put together by a conjunction. So what might that look like?
Where you print this up?
Okay, so I can say the students were assigned to pairs They completed a worksheet?
Yeah.
All right. Students were assigned to pairs. Make sure you put your punctuation in there. Half the battle. Ooh, species. Cool. Okay. How are you guys doing on the subordinating conjunctions? Have you found some that you're going to use? Despite having a runny nose, I still attended class. See? Despite having a runny nose, comma, I still attended class. How you doing? Ding dong. As long as your sentences follow the rules. Very good. Did you get your one down?
What was that? Sign? That's the first time?
A-S-S-I-G-N-E. Two pairs. And they completed a worksheet? Okay. It doesn't matter. You'll have a complete thought, or whatever you want to say. Maybe you just want to say,
I think so.
but they just stared at each other. Okay? All right, Melissa, what would you use for a complex sentence? You've got to have a dependent clause to the independent clause. So what might be a dependent clause? And you could use any of these words to start it. When? So what do you want to say for when? You want to start a sentence with when? When gets used a lot, I think, because we tend to frame everything by time. When did this, or when that, what else we do this, when we want to, so we do use it a lot. So what would you put at the beginning of a sentence, do you think?
Which one are you doing? Complex sentence?
You don't have to use just when. See, here there's a whole list of these things that are commonly used subordinating conjunctions. These begin like a dependent clause. So you could use any of them. And then these are the coordinating conjunctions. These independent clauses. But anyway, you can use any one of those. So if you're going to start with when,
We bought class again.
could be. What else goes on in your lives? Work, okay. Maybe when I work, what? When I'm going to work, then complete a thought. What do you think?
You're right.
Maybe you can think of an excuse to give to somebody, like why you're home late. You get home late and then your mom says, okay, explain yourself. And then you're going to start in, well, so everybody uses that. Well, when I went to work, what? Right? And you done what could happen? What's the scenario that could happen?
Yes. Tired.
That's pretty typical, isn't it? So tired,
Tired.
blew out on the car. Okay. That would work for complex because now you've got independent clause in front, go to an independent clause. Now the last one is a complex sentence, and you're going to have a couple independent clauses and a dependent clause. And they give you an example to kind of show you how it's all starts out with the dependent clause. How you guys doing on this? Yeah. So you guys think you hit the pattern? Well, on page 331 is a list of the subordinating conjunctions, so you don't have to just use when. That gets used a lot, but all the 331. Because the dog ate my homework, I was unable to turn in my assignment, so I had to stay after class. Right? That would be one? How are you guys doing with it?
But maybe there's a pile up and could be because it was out today, my car overheated. Yeah. Oh, well, and this one we could easily turn on the compound complex because it was hot today. My radiator overheated and my car broke down. Swap it into that. Good. Right.
No, I'm just saying that's how easy it is. I'm looking to you guys to be more creative, me not having to do all of it. Okay, does that make sense? Do you guys got some sentences? Okay. What do you get? Compound complex?
How would you say that?
But you don't need a comma. So now what you want, you're starting out with a dependent clause. And so then you want to put on a couple of independent clauses. So you say, my boss deducted money from my paycheck, right?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, comma, but he offered me weekend work. So somehow you can make it up.
Oh,
You see? So you're using a different conjunction in there. Okay, so let's go through these just a see where you guys are. And if you can, you might not always be able to remember the pattern, but I might be able to give you the pattern and say, oh, write a complex sentence. A complex sentence then is what? It's one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses is typically a complex sentence. So if I give you the pattern, all you have to think of is, okay, how do I create an independent clause? So what does a dependent clause look like? Remember the dependent clauses, they're like little kids. They can't stand on their own. They gotta hold your hand. Or hold the hand of the independent clause as they trot off to school. And basically, you're starting the sentence with a subordinating conjunction. And there's a list of those on 331. Because, although, even though, if, unless, so that, before, after, okay? So those are common ones. Those are the things you have to remember. Okay, so, Eddie and Elisa, what did you guys have for your compound sentence? What is a compound one?
I woke up late, so I was late to class.
I woke up late, comma, so I was late to class. Yes, that is a compound sentence. Two independents hooked together by one of those coordinating conjunctions. What did you guys have for a complex sentence?
Because it was hot today, my car overheated.
Because it was hot today, my car overheated. Yes. Good. Did you have a comment there? Did you have a comment? After your dependent? Good job. What did you guys have for complex, let me see, compound complex?
Because my pen didn't work, I couldn't take notes so much class.
Did everybody hear that? Sarah, could you do that one more time?
Because my pen didn't work, I couldn't take notes, so I left class.
Oh my goodness, well, we're gonna fix that. We're gonna get you a new pen. Okay, so that's absolutely correct. She started it because my pen didn't work, comma, right? I couldn't take notes, comma, and I left the class. Is that correct?
So I left class.
So I left the class, yes, so the comma's right in front of so. Okay, good job. All right, you guys back here. What did you have for a complex sentence? Because the coffee was out, I had to make more. Okay? Good. 82, what did you have for a compound complex? Listen up, folks.
Because I left work early, my boss deducted money from my paycheck, but he offered my weekend.
Okay.
He offered weekend.
He offered weekend work. So, because I left for work early, comma, my boss deducted money from my paycheck, comma, but he offered me weekend work. Okay, good. Does it all seem to make sense? Okay, good. Think about these. I'm giving you the handouts, and we will have some of these on the midterm, so I wanted you guys to be familiar with them. The next thing we're going to cover is rhetoric and rhetorical styles, but also persuasive appeals. Go down and check out a laptop and bring back, because we want to be able to look at some appeals. So if you go down and check it out and you have time for a break, bring it back here. The handout that I gave you on the art of rhetoric, this one, it talks about rhetoric is the act of speaking or writing effectively, or it's the art of persuasion. So it's your ability to persuade someone to your way of thinking, right? You're trying to convince someone. So you're going to use one of three different approaches in persuasive appeals. And so Aristotle called these three, and I wanted you guys to, on your laptops, if you've got them fired up, I want you to look to plug in logos. There are three kinds: logos, ethos, and pathos. Type in logos. As soon as you can get hooked to the internet. Let me know if you're having any trouble getting hooked up. Are you on? Okay, go ahead and log in there. Log in as OLC. Well, watching Tonka is Fortitude. Yeah? What did you find out about logos when you typed that in? What does the Greek word logos refer to? Reason, okay? Logic and reason. On your sheet, it tells you all these things, but they'll give you plenty of examples when you Google it. Usually there's some little clips that students have made, either in Prezi or in some other kind of software, that talks about how you can understand how these appeals work, but we're going to work our way through them. It is an appeal based on logic or reason. Okay? So what kinds of evidence would we use that would be logical or reasonable to convince an audience? What kinds of things do we use? What kinds of evidence would we use if we were going to write something that was logical or reasonable?
Scholarly documents.
Okay, so we would use, in terms of evidence, probably research, right? Numbers. So if I used economics, if I said, oh, you know, you can buy tires for $62 a tire here, but at this other store, it's $82 a tire, $20 more. Same tire, same warranty, everything. So I'm asking you to do the economics in your head. What would make more sense? Typically, you're not going to pay more. You're going to try and find the best price. Is that not right? Because it's your money. So if I'm tapping into your instinct for economics, then it's probably reason or logic I'm using. Okay? So numbers, statistics. You can lose 25% of your body fat if you do this. So anytime I'm using numbers and backing that up with something. Percentages. Okay? What is ethos? What do you get when you type in ethos? It's an appeal to ethics, right? And it means convincing someone of character or credibility. It has to do with character, rank, reputation. Any of those things kind of fall into this. What kind of evidence would you need to know that there is ethos being used? Does everybody know what I mean by rank? Eddie, can you explain how rank works in the military?
It's like where you stand amongst your peers.
So it's a level of what? Achievement, or a level of endurance, or a level of what? You start out as a what?
Private.
You start out as a private, and what's the next thing you can get to?
Private second class, and then private first class, specialist, Sergeant.
then a sergeant after a specialist. So you achieve each one of those ranks through
Time and service and what you accomplish.
and performance. So time, service, and performance, right? Okay, so that's rank. So would you say in the military, if a sergeant told a private first class to do something, you do it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's an appeal to ethos, in a sense. They can say, I outrank you, I need you to do this, sort of a thing. Okay? The other kinds of appeal, like on character or reputation, might be, for instance, Tiger Woods, if he's selling golf clubs or if he's making an appearance for golf clubs, that's using his reputation as one of the greatest golfers in the world to sell those golf clubs. Why should you believe him? He's a great golfer. Why would you not believe him? So the whole point behind ethos, if you're going to use someone with character or someone that has rank or reputation, is because they have that kind of experience or performance behind them. If it's a, do they have generals in the Army?
Yeah, those are officers.
Okay, so if an officer has gone through all of these hoops to get to that level, and the officer says, okay, this is the plan, I think this is what we're going to go with, you got to trust him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's leading the crew, okay? And it's the same way with someone who gains reputation. So let's think of someone that might have a reputation. Let's say an activist. Who's an activist that you know that's out there doing active work for social causes? Can you think of anyone?
Is Dennis Banks still count? Is he too old?
No, he's not too old. That was really, I mean, the A movement started really out of that whole need to create social justice, right? And so if he's going to talk about Native issues, people probably listen because he's got a lot of experience. So that's using ethos. That's an appeal to ethos. Okay? So the evidence you would use is going on someone's expertise to convince. Okay, so if you happen to go to the doctor and you get a blood test and they say, you know, you're borderline diabetic. I really do think you need to take this sort of medication. Are you going to believe the doctor?
Yeah.
Okay, right? Why do you believe the doctor?
Because he has the education to back up what he's saying.
Exactly. So that's part of what, if you're going to appeal to someone's, if you're going to use that kind of appeal, well, the doctor said, you know, 9 out of 10 patients use this particular medication and it works well. Now, how many of you like football? Do you all familiar with football? Some of you like it, some of you don't like it. What is the latest conversation around football and football injuries? 82? The sign language, I need you to convert it into verbal. Brain injuries, exactly. And so there was a particular doctor who got to the bottom of that, and it was only through postmortem, right? They had to do a postmortem look at the brain, and the latest research from all of that is what? Have you heard that? Like 99 out of 100 brains were affected with this CME. It's a particular thing that they call it that's that effect to the brain. I don't know you're coaching football, but nonetheless, this is talking about in the NFL. But I mean, it's a huge concern. That's a huge percentage. So now, if I quote that doctor, I'm not only using ethos, but I'm using logos because the research is showing 99% of those brains they looked at had trauma to them. Trauma that looks similar. They all look alike, the same kinds of trauma. Okay? So that's where I would maybe be using a couple of them. The last one is pathos. What do you find when you look at pathos?
appeal to emotions of the audience.
Okay, you're appealing to emotion. Okay? Should write these differently. Appeal to logic or reason. Okay, so what does it mean to appeal to someone's emotions? Anyone know?
Just,
By how a person feels, right? And if you're going to appeal to that, I'm going to give you a scenario. And I'm going to put you into two groups in which you create this scenario. But think about how you would appeal to someone's emotions. Because emotions are what? There are some that think there really are only two. You only have two emotions, and everything else is a derivative of that. So there is love or there is fear. And everything else stems from that. I don't know if that's exactly true, but there's lots of emotions, right? Have you ever seen the little chart where it has the little faces and they're showing all the different kinds of emotions? Yeah, they're pretty cute. So there's things like disdain, contempt, joy, sorrow, laughter, happiness, love, right? All of those are emotions. And if you want to tap into that, that may be how you're going to approach your essay, because you're using evidence to appeal to your widest audience. Okay, so what I need you to do is I need one half of the room over here and one half of the room over here, and I'm going to put you in this larger group so there's more of you to talk, because pairs don't always work. This is a scenario you get. You are in a family where there are, you have 3 siblings, so there's 4 of you, 4 siblings total in your family. You still have parents and you have grandparents, okay? You've just been to visit grandma, and grandma is not doing so well. Grandma's on shaky ground. What's wrong with grandma? I don't know. Maybe you decide that. But your parents have asked you to write a letter to your siblings so that you can discuss next steps, what needs to happen for grandma. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to, in your groups, write this letter to your siblings. And what you're going to need to do is you need a paragraph in which you appeal by logic. So you're going to have to figure out how you appeal to them by logic, by ethos, and by pathos. Okay? Does that make sense? You're writing a letter to your siblings. You got 3 of them. I'm giving you the construct of your family. You're writing to them because grandma isn't doing well. You determine what's the matter with her. Maybe it's a physical ailment, maybe it's dementia, whatever it is, but grandma needs help, so you need to get that across to your siblings. Are you going to say, listen, you bunch of slackers, I'm the only one that ever visits grandma, and that's got to stop? Do we want to say that? Because what would happen? We would be appealing to their emotion, but they would then be on the defensive saying, not very nice things about you. So you could appeal to their emotions saying, grandma is really getting elderly, and we don't have much time left with her, so we want to make sure that she's as comfortable as possible during these last years. And you are appealing to their emotions because they love their grandmother too, right? So you're appealing to their sense of loyalty, love, consideration, and responsibility to their grandmother. That's a pathos approach. If you're using an ethos approach in which you're going to appeal to rank or character or reputation, ethics, what would the approach be? What would you say to them, your siblings? Not anything. Well, you can decide if they're younger, if you're the oldest. I'm the oldest, and I get to decide what happens. Now, ethos is about what? You call in the big guns, right? You might talk about, you know what, Dr. So-and-so, who's just in the clinic down the road, said that grandma would really benefit from having this type of a therapy and we need help. So you have to decide, are you appealing to your siblings for money, time, attention, other kinds of resources? What are you appealing to them for? And then finally, logos. You know, maybe you're going to bring up the fact that, do you know how much it costs? Do any of you know what it costs to be in a nursing home? My class last night told me it's $5,000 a month. Tell me any elderly that makes $5,000 a month. This doesn't happen by the time you're that age. You know, you don't have that kind of money. So $5,000 a month, how much is that a day? $160-some a day to keep grandma in a nursing home. And it's why a lot of families don't want to put their elderly family members in a nursing home, because it's kind of impersonal in that, unless they really need a lot of care that they can't provide. But money is one of the inhibitors of being able to get them placed. And space is another problem. But anyway, you might use numbers or stats to do that. So what I need from you in your group, and you can huddle up here by this group, because we got them kind of fenced off over here. And then I need you to huddle up here by Sheldon and Denisha. Give them personal space, don't, sit right next to them. But I need you to talk about how you're going to write this letter. And you're going to have a paragraph that addresses each one of these tactics, one of these approaches. Okay? And you're writing to Cindy, Bob, Sue, and Larry, or whoever. Whatever you want to name them, your siblings. Hurry, folks. Hurry. We've only got just minimal time.
Are we writing it in one?
Yeah, you're writing it in one. So I need all of you guys to move up there. Did you want to volunteer to write it? Be the recorder of it?
Yeah.
You could. Okay. Okay. So you need to put all of your names on the paper. Put all your names on there, and then start writing about how you would get your siblings to help you. And you need to figure out what you want help with. Are you going to appeal to them for money, time, attention, resources?
How do you spell
Better. You should name your siblings, because honestly, if you're going to send them a letter, you're not going to say, hey, you. You're going to actually say, hey, Susie.
I mean, if they're your siblings,
So 3 paragraphs. So 1 paragraph would address that, the second would address this, and the third would address pathos. Okay? Figure out how you would convince them. Eddie, too, I thought you were recording this. Okay. Eddie, too, is his name. So, how would you start it out? How do you start a letter? Dear. Okay, that's helpful. Dear who? Who are we writing it to?
Little Benjamin and Andy.
Okay, little Benjamin, Andy. Who else? Did you have any sisters? There should be some sisters in the mix. No, 4.
4?
Oh, well, there's 3. There's actually 3, including yourself. So you're writing to the other 3. You're right. Yep. Do you need one more? Pub Cindy and Gertrude. Good.
No, that was brother again.
What?
That was brother again, Paul.
What? Okay.
You could say according to.
Now, do you suspect that there might be a way in Pathos to appeal to emotion that's different for men than women? Why? Why do you think that's the case? With emotions, right?
You could use it as sad. It says ethos.
Is it harder to appeal to men's empathy, do you think?
Yeah.
Why is that? I don't think you have less of ability to be kind or compassionate. Do we think women are hardwired for that?
Yeah.
You might want to refrain, right? No. But in terms of when you write this, that's how things can be written to convince people as well, as you're appealing to that, maybe that nurturing part. You know, someone's nurturing. So think about that with Pathos. With logos, it's really much more reasonable. You know? So you might be appealing to the fact that there's only 8 hours in a day. I realize you guys work and that, you know, trying to fit in some extra hours to spend with grandma might be difficult, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, think about logos appealing to your sense of reason.
Okay, yeah, according to Dr. Clark, Grandma Ethel has been diagnosed with what? Alzheimer's. What it has to be?
Has to be something you need help with, most likely. Either help physically or resource-wise, you know, time, attention, money. Yeah, you got to say you're writing to them. You don't have to start with logos. You just need a paragraph that in the letter you're writing it where you're appealing to that kind of emotion. So you need to let them know what's going on with grandma. What's grandma got?
He's got talent.
What has she got?
She's diagnosed with breast cancer.
What's her name?
Any input?
Their grandma's name is Ethel. No, you need a name, honestly. Well, they're going to know, except if you have both sets of grandparents, how do you know? Because then they could write back and say, well, you didn't say which grandma it was. Was it Grandma Rebecca or Grandma Jane?
What if one grandma already passed away?
Yeah, that could be true. Yeah, that's a good point. So what kind of help does grandma need? What's wrong with her? Because really a letter, formally, you should say, this is the problem, right? You're making a point, this is a problem, this is what needs to happen, whether you're using logos, ethos, or pathos.
I'll just say she's not sick, I guess. She just needs a little bit more help. Would that work?
Good. She's just not herself lately.
Instead of being sick.
Okay, because you don't want to make her sick?
Yeah.
You don't want to manifest that? Okay. All right, well, you got to write it down. You got to explain what the situation is because they don't know. They're not living here. You're here. And your parents called you in and said, you know, you need to come over here. We've got to talk about this. Okay.
How are we doing? Ooh, you relinquished it down that further.
We can say like, as grandkids, we have an obligation to visit her and make her feel at home and stuff. Comfort her.
Motivation to what?
To visit her, make her feel at home, make her laugh. Stuff like that.
Because it's good and hard for her to perform daily tasks on her own.
It doesn't have to be lengthy. You just have to be able to convince them with one paragraph with logos, the next paragraph try to convince them with ethos, and the next paragraph with pathos.
That's kind of all of them mixed up into that.
That's like when you're bringing a doctor in or something. So the doctor was saying, it's getting worse every day or something. It's constant tension. See? I'm giving
It could be a doctor, or it could be like a community health nurse, is saying, you know, that grandma would really benefit from more visits from her grandchildren, right? Or just more help around the house, and is there a way we can divvy that up? From the logos appeal, it might be about saving money to do that. And if we divvy it up, because it's so important for any one person. The other problem is, what if little Benjamin lives, you know, in North Dakota? He might have to pony up some money, because basically he can't get down here and do it. So you have to kind of think of those particular scenarios that could happen.
Yeah, the right side. Wasn't you saying so? I think
There you go.
Yeah, like 3 and 1.
What she had surgery on.
What'd you say? You can't have time on paragraph. Well, that paragraph you're using ethos.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. You're saying we have an obligation to visit her and make her feel at home and comfort her. You're appealing to their emotions about their grandmother. Because the statement of fact is she's been diagnosed. That's just a statement of fact, okay? That you just said set the scenario. So now what you need to think about is, you know, is there somebody that her doctor has recommended, you know, that she have constant care, or that she have, you know, supervised care for a certain percent of the day, and you know, we need your assistance in how to provide this care for her, so that it's not, you know, a burden to just any one person. Yeah, any one grandchild. So then you would be appealing to ethos, because her doctor is saying that this would be the best route for her. If you're appealing to logos, then you're appealing to either money, time, you know, maybe it's the economics, maybe one. Do all of those siblings live right here? Are there someplace else? It could be. Which may be why they're not there to be able to provide stuff. So then you have to say, you know, if you can't.
So we're supposed to persuade them to what?
You're persuading with each one of these appeals. So if you're persuading to the ethics or ethos, then you're going to quote that the doctor says she needs this. Or the community health nurse says she would benefit from this and be more comfortable. And that would be one paragraph. Another paragraph in dealing with, see, this already deals with pathos. You know?
I know. That's why we said it kind of has all 3 in 1.
But it doesn't have all 3 because, well, see, up here, it's only because this is a statement of fact. Grandma's got it. But you're not saying what the doctor recommends. So what does the doctor recommend? Chemotherapy. The doctor's recommending this, so therefore grandma needs this. Mastectomy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mastectomy. Or she's recovering from a mastectomy. You can put in whatever you want. But ethos would actually use doctor's orders or something like that. Logos, you might be appealing to what it's going to cost, you know, economically. Or you might talk about she has a stronger chance of survival if she has more interaction with her family members. And it's kind of tied to, I mean, all of it would be kind of tied to pathos, you know, because it's your grandma, number one, but. So yeah, each paragraph should focus on that kind of appeal. And they don't have to be lengthy, but what would you say to your siblings? Writing a letter is not, I'm not saying it's the easiest thing, but it gives you an easier prompt to start with, because like, well, what would you say to them if you were in that situation?
We can say that the doctor recommended removal, and that's what they need to discuss.
So is she going to require specialized care?
They probably don't know what that is.
And what would you guys require from your siblings?
I don't know if we'll visit. What can you do? You said visit her.
Provide money? If it's going to cost to get someone to come in and sit with her?
Provide a girlfriend.
You know, besides just visiting, or maybe you're going to make meals and bring you meals?
Maybe just somebody.
It's how do you take care of a crisis situation, but you got to write the letter. That's the issue in putting you guys in, is you're writing the letter to them to explain. But there's different ways to appeal. Okay? You guys have to follow directions, honestly. Come on, I know that I don't have to let it fire on you.
See, there's mine, there's hers, there's
Okay, but you're saying she needs help because it's getting hard for her to perform daily tasks on her own. But you don't say what those are, it's all kind of general. After the surgery, she'll need immediate care and attention. The surgery will be costly in itself, all in itself. The four of us should find a way to help the best we can in her time of need. Since she can't work, we should find a way to provide assistance that pays her bills. But there's other things you can do. You could bake her cookies, right? You could, and if she can't peel apples anymore, you could cut up her apple for her. Right?
Okay.
What's
So
to
it is-
discuss though?
It isn't just the visit, right? How does she wash her clothes?
Yeah.
Is she able to do
And
that?
whether or
She's
not it's a
able
good
to do
idea.
that. Who does it for her? You can't have grandma going around and, soiled laundry. Yeah, so,
So would that be a new paragraph?
yes, that would be a new paragraph. And to talk about what kinds of things does she need help with, and how could the siblings assist with that? And are you using a logical approach or reasonable approach? Is it reasonable to ask your siblings for help in the first place?
How would I start it off? She needs that? Grandma needs that?
Yeah, you're writing a letter.
Grandma, what I need?
You didn't want to name her. So you need specifics of what kind of help she needs. Not just that she's getting, more frail or whatever. How we do it. Discuss this as a group. Has recommended we decide discuss this as a group. What are you going to discuss? Aftercare?
If it's a good idea or not, and how to pay for it.
So whether you go ahead with it, maybe she's too old to have one. Is that part of the discussion? You might need to state that. The discussion really is about grandma's age and whether she is even a good applicant for surgery. The doctor thinks she is. Do you trust the doctor or not? Or do you decide on your own? That's the doctor. What about logos? Is that where the next paragraph is discussing what it's going to cost?
That's good.
What's the survival rate? How old is grandma? 80. Okay. She's 80, so what's the survival rate of 80-year-olds having a second? Well, you can make something up, but nonetheless, you're writing a letter to your SIBs to get them to help. So. Yeah, your SIBs. So ask them what it would, you can make up the stuff, but anytime you're using that, you're using logos, right? liposuction, and then she got an infection, and now that's all going south or something. Which wouldn't be good.
I think they should just get it because there's a slight chance she'll get better. And if not, there's a cancel this get worse.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you could write that in there. I mean, if you want to approach it that way, then, you know, it would be your suggestion as one sibling that this is what we should do.
Is this one? Not this one. Is this one?
The other, and in proposing that as well, you can say, please write back if you have any opposition to this particular proposal about encouraging her to go through with the surgery.
That could be locals. Easy.
Do you want to add that? You could add it. Go ahead. Do we move on? I mean, for one paragraph.
Well, interestingly, in comp, you're writing essays.
Sorry, I didn't
What
do that.
task? Who will be?
You want one letter consisting of each paragraph.
Yeah, the letter.
Okay, I thought you wanted 3 separate letters.
No, I want one letter. But each paragraph would focus on that particular appeal. So the information you put in the paragraph is what's dictating, really, right? Because you're appealing to that sort of thing. You see it every day in
So
commercials.
you just started,
What schedule and
okay.
plan. You need to get together and work the schedule and plan. Copy?
Can I say hi to the camera? Can I say hi to the camera?
Say hi.
So they're using Pathos, this appeal to emotion in the Mayhem ads, and then they flip back to logos. You want to make sure that you're covered, because you don't want to be, right? You don't want to be vulnerable and have to pay out of pocket of money that you probably don't have for something like that. So that's kind of one way we look at persuasive appeals. It's the same way when you write. You're using an appeal to whoever your audience is to believe what you have to say. If you're writing to your siblings, this isn't a hard assignment. This exercise really is just about getting you to think, how am I going to appeal to their sense of duty to my grandma, to our grandma, right? And how do I do that and use logos? Well, you're going to appeal to their sense of wanting to save money, save time, those kinds of things. If you're wanting to appeal to ethos, it's really about, this is what, the doctor says, this is what happens, the research shows if elderly people don't get the kind of care they need, that neglect can lead to their demise, those kinds of things. And then pathos is really just that appeal to, we all have an obligation. This is our grandma, we love her. We want her to be with us as long as possible, sort of thing. So that's how you would address it. So rather than having you do it individually, I want you to do it as a group. So going forward, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Freedom Writer's Diary as a way to get started with and talk about narratives. But I'm also going to give you a persuasion map again. I gave you guys one of these before, but this one you will turn in. And this has to do with your narrative. So, questions?
What we did on these?
We'll take a quick break.
I'll do another one.
Yeah. Yep. I've seen some of yours, but I want you guys to think about how we write introductions and attention getters and things like that. So I want to give you a blank one. So in case your other one wasn't what you wanted, I'll make sure that you get it, because you'll turn it in then with your rough draft. Okay? So take a break and we'll come back and we'll look at this one. If you haven't read this or looked through it, you need to do so. So I really, last time I think, I don't know, we ran out of time really, because we had the library here and we tried to get on. It's very difficult to get on the internet for some reason. But I want you guys to focus on your introduction to your essay and write an attention getter and a way to pull people, your audience, into your essay. But for next week, one of the primary assignments I need you to do is to find examples of each of these appeals. So you're going to find visual examples of each persuasive appeal. You can use YouTube, magazine ads work pretty well. Newspaper, sometimes. It depends. Usually it has to be a larger newspaper to get some of those ads in. I'm trying to think, we really don't have anything here in terms of posters, but any kind of marketing material works well because that's really what marketers look at. Marketing looks at how to sell, and they will use any combination of these. Okay, so you'll need to do that. And then I need the rough drafts of your narrative descriptive essay. So part of the reason that I gave you the persuasive maps again is I want you to plan, this is planning and drafting, and thinking about, well, what is it I'm going to write about? And so it's like a concept map. It requires you to think about those subpoints that you want to create. Much like, I'll give you another copy of this. This is the thesis exercise. It's like, well, I have an opinion about this, because you're going to make a point in your narrative. And then you want to think of those subpoints. That's the why question. I think our community could improve. Why? In what ways? They can improve by a rec center, shopping center, any kind of economic development would help. And those end up being your subpoints for your narrative. Another way to approach narrative is, I think I told you this last week, in terms of your scholarship essay, one prompt that gets used is advice you give to your younger self, or what's a life lesson I've learned. What is something that I would want to teach my child that I was taught, when I was younger? Or what is something I've learned that I want to teach to my child? Part of why I photocopied this little snippet, it's out of the diary of the Freedom Writers Diary. This is a group that Erin Grewell worked with in inner city. And she had a group of students and she turned them into writers. And part of how she did that was she inspired them to write about what they knew about. That's where you need to start with a narrative essay, is what do you know about? What's your experience? What's your life experience? Good, bad, or other, it doesn't really matter. There's not a judgment about it, it's just about your ability to tell that story. And this, I just pulled from Diary 74. Dear Diary, my mom always told me that one person can make a difference that can change the whole world. It sounds unbelievable to me that one person could be a catalyst for such change. She also told me that when she was younger in the 60s, there were many men and women who made significant changes that affected her life as well as the world around her. Rosa Parks was one of those incredible people that changed the world. Who's Rosa Parks?
She's an African-American activist.
Mm-hmm. Did she intend on being an activist? No, what did she do exactly?
She denied writing her seat on the bus.
On the bus. She refused to give up her seat on the bus. And so in that instant, she did become an activist, right? Okay. So basically what happened is her action, by that action, because I think she was taken to jail, right? In that action, she astonished a lot of people. And a lot of people thought, wow, here's this little tiny lady, and she was kind of small in stature. You know, she can do this. You know, maybe we should be standing up too. So she opened the door for one of the most famous boycotts of our time and introduced the struggle for civil rights. After listening to my mom's account of Rosa Parks' protest, I thought about the power she had, the power to challenge segregation and to stand up for what she believed was right. Rosa Parks was a true catalyst for change, and she was only one person. Hearing about her and her protest showed me that there is hope for me and all the students in Mrs. G's classes to truly be catalysts for change. Imagine if there were 150 Rosa Parks standing up for tolerance. What a difference we would make. Diary 75, day 75, I'm guessing. Dear Diary, I feel like I finally have a purpose in this class and in life. The purpose is to make a difference and stand up for a cause. Mrs. G showed us a video during Black History Month about a group of civil rights activists in the 1960s who were inspired by Rosa Parks. They decided to challenge segregation in the South. Rather than boycott buses, they took their challenge a step farther, and they integrated their bus and traveled from Washington, D.C. through the Deep South. There were 7 whites and 6 blacks on the bus, most of them college students, and they were called the Freedom Riders. And their goal was to change segregated interstate travel along with everyone's life forever. The Freedom Riders had faith that what they were doing was right, and they wanted the world to know that change was necessary and being tolerant of each other is good. I can picture myself on the road on that bus. I can visualize pulling into the bus station in Montgomery, Alabama, to discovering the unsettling quietness. Even though they didn't expect a warm welcome, no one was to be seen at the station, not even the attendants. All of a sudden, Ku Klux Klan members were everywhere. Hundreds of them surrounded the bus. Some carried bats or metal poles, others held vicious German shepherds growling and ready to attack. The mob was just waiting to get their hands on the riders. And the Freedom Riders were barricaded on the bus. The mob, armed and hungry to attack, was just waiting for the first victim to step off the bus. By choice, the seating arrangement on the bus was integrated. Blacks sat by whites and vice versa. They were breaking a law that had been established in the South. This was unheard of. Jim Zwerg, a white man, stood up from the back of the bus. He wanted to be the first person to step off, even though he knew that on the other side of the door was a mob of bigots drooling for a victim. What was he thinking? He felt this was his chance to fight back nonviolently and show his feelings to others. These strong feelings put his life at risk. He took the first step off the bus and the mob pulled him into their grasp. It was as if he had been swallowed up and disappeared like bees on honey. Jim was almost beaten to death. He suffered a cracked skull from being hit with an iron pipe, a broken leg, and many cuts and bruises. During the moments the mob was beating on him, the other Freedom Riders got a chance to run for shelter. I was impressed that Jim made a choice to be on that bus when he didn't have to. After all, he was white and he'd sit wherever he wanted and risk everything when he didn't have to. He wanted to fight for others who didn't have the same privileges or rights as he did, which made me realize that's been my role for the last 2 years. Since I'm white and my parents make a lot of money, I probably could have gotten out of Mrs. G's class if my parents had made a big enough fuss. I'm sure that because of Jim's choice of riding that bus of black people, a lot of his peers must have thought he was crazy. After all, he didn't have to. Diary 76. Dear Diary, me, cleaning my mother's blood off the wall, represented the tornado breaking and destroying her face. I like to call my mother's boyfriend the tornado. After he would hit, everything would look like it had been caught in a whirlwind. Our apartment, our sanity, and my mother's face. I was cleaning up after the tornado hit my house and diminished everything. Washing my mom's blood, which was shed from time to time, a sacrifice to make him happy. He lived for blood, her blood, enjoying every fist that hit her flesh and every scream that took place. While he broke televisions, stereos, VCRs, and the dining room table, it didn't compare to the breaking of her mind. My mom was never the same, and neither was I. Damn, that was really deep. I think now that we're freedom riders, we're taking the freedom riding part to heart. We've decided to bind all of our diary entries and call it an American Diary, Victims of an Undeclared War. Someone said he refused to be called a victim, and we all agreed, so we came up with Voices instead. Since we titled it an American Diary, Voices from an Undeclared War, we felt that someone should hear our voices, but who should be the right person to listen? We wanted to shoot big. The mayor? No. The governor? Hell no. Some of us are still upset about Proposition 187. The president? Nah. We wanted someone who had a direct effect on education. Mrs. G mentioned some guy named Richard Riley. Supposedly he's the top dog in his field, and I think he's the United States Secretary of Education. He claims he wants to get to know America's youth, and as part of America's youth, we would give it to him straight. He's adamant about changing education, and we're adamant about revolutionizing it. He's perfect. There's a catch. He's in Washington. How the hell are we going to get there? Since we became freedom writers, people have been acting even crazier than ever. They stay after school and even come in at lunch. Last night we didn't leave here until 10 p.m. and the custodian had to kick us out. We tried to bribe him with pizza, but it didn't work. That's nothing compared to the other night, though, when we almost got arrested. We were editing stories. This is a story, right? When you write in a diary, you're telling a story. What do you think the point is of that voice that I just read? What's the point the voice is trying to make? What's the voice talking about?
Life.
Life, right? But in particular, he or she is talking about what? Being a catalyst for change? That being in this writers group, that this teacher formed a writers group and had all the students write their stories, that it was getting deep. People were really deciding that they wanted to put it all out there, tell the truth, tell their truth. And that's what ended up happening being this book. This is why this book is called The Freedom Writer's Diary, is because they essentially started with those drafts and they refined and polished them until they became this book. But she inspired them to write about what they knew, good, bad, or other. It just is. That's what makes a story a story. That's why when you read this, you listen to it and you think, wow, this is what's going on for this person. Much of this is a reflection of what's going on in the class and what's happening with the group. But if there's italicized sections, those are snippets from people's individual narratives that they're writing, just like the tornado and beating up his mother. It's that sense that they're reading each other's work, trying to make it better and polishing it, and thinking about the stories that they tell. There's always a point. And that's the thing I want you guys to think about when you're writing your own narrative. What is it the point that you're trying to make? Okay? So, if you're applying for scholarships, make sure you do it by tomorrow. Tomorrow is the deadline.
What time?
I do not know. You'll have to ask the counselor. But I know tomorrow's the deadline, so I'm sure you have the full day. And you'll want to type those up, and then you have to go into the American Indian College Fund and submit them that way. So, if you wrote an essay, I need to visit with you individually about your essays, about ways you can polish it. Because some of you gave me handwritten copies, and some of you typed yours. If you know you're not eligible for funding of any kind, you're still writing the essay for me. So I will take it as a rough draft, and then I'll make comments on it and can give it back to you. But if you're actually applying, you probably need me to look at that, and you need time to get it typed, because you're going to have to submit it typed. Okay? So, next week, I need your rough draft of your narrative essay. You should be giving me your drafts or your final of your scholarship essays. I should have those, or I'll visit with you about your drafts. And then you need to find examples of each of these. And you're going to want to explain why they fit that. Okay? On your persuasive map, I want you to fill that out because that will be attached to your rough draft. So you've already done the brainstorming and figured out in your narrative what you're going to cover, and you will attach that then to your rough draft. If you've worked on your introduction and your attention getter, you can either put that on the back of that persuasion map and do it that way so that it shows some progress that you've made on writing an introduction and an attention getter. Okay, questions?
What's the narrative one?
You decide. I didn't give you a prompt. It's a narrative. You have to tell a story. Okay? All right.
I know. I got my final draft done. It's on joke there.
It's on the jump drive? So can you print it out?
I'll send it to you.
Okay. So I need to visit with Sheldon and with Nicholas on theirs. Okay? And I have yours. I don't have the rest of yours, so I need your scholarship drafts. Yes?
I emailed you.
You emailed me, yeah. I have. So. Okay, any other questions? Okay, Shanti, what are you bringing in next week? What's due? Okay. No, your final draft of your scholarship essays are due today. They're due today.
Oh, I didn't send that in.
Yeah, okay. So those are due today, the scholarship, that's your baseline essay. The narratives, the rough draft is due next week. And you choose a topic for that, which is why I've given you all these sheets with little templates on there so that you can start that process. Okay, what else is due next week?
Find examples.
Find examples. You need to bring them in, so you're going to have to tear them out of the magazine, bring them in, or find them on YouTube, cue them up.
Of those, right?
Yeah, of each of those appeals. Yep. I have stacks of them as examples, and I'll show you some next week, but you need to bring in your own examples, okay?
How much?
Just one of each. Now, remember, there might be a mix of those appeals in there, but what is the predominant appeal? Is it logos, ethos, or pathos? Okay, you have the handout that describes those. Okay. Questions? No? All right. Good luck with it.